Lieutenant, High Sheriff, ladies and gentlemen, please all stand. The Lord Mayor of Oxford, Councillor Mark Ligo.
My Lord Lieutenant, Deputy Lord Mayor, City Sheriff, High Sheriff of the County, Chairman of the County, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to welcome you here to the Town Hall for the election of the Lord Mayoralty. The first time we've opened to mark this occasion in person since 2019. I can only say I've enjoyed every second of my tenure as Lord Mayor of Oxford. Every engagement, be it over the phone, virtually, or in person, has brought me great insight to all the good work that is happening in our diverse city and with our friends and colleagues internationally. I had 5 themes for my civic year: grassroots sports, grassroots culture, grassroots community, volunteering and well-being. This is why I selected Oxford's Mind, Art Tea, Wood Farm Youth Centre for my chosen charities. These organisations are doing incredible work across the city, helping the most in need. I am very proud to have supported them. Regrettably, due to the pandemic, many of our much-loved annual fundraising opportunities had to be cancelled. For example, the Christmas Carol concert. Fortunately, as things began to open up, I was able to host the Lord Mayor's Rugby Festival, but not just once, but twice. And we also had the Lord Mayor's Charity Quiz, which was nice to see friends and family and communities across the city coming together for a great night. I'd also like to thank the Town Hall for their hard work and collaboration for that night. I'd also like to thank Stuart James, Oxford Harlequins and all the other committee members, which money was raised for my 3 chosen charities was £7,879.78. Despite lockdown, this year I've managed to attend 200 events. Whilst I've enjoyed every single one, I have a few highlights: presenting certificates to our charities and organisations in the city, including our staff, Oxford City Council and Oxford Direct Services for their amazing work during the pandemic and periods of lockdown. Attending various events at St Michael's, the city's church, a silent welcome walking tour and lunch, and various meetings with the Syrian sisters and the Iraqi sisters. Supporting the round table with their various charity initiatives, including the Santa Sleigh and Quarry Risinghurst, various school visits and returns to the Lord Mayor's Parlour, Thames Valley Multi-Faith Service, mayoral dinners around the county, and my special relationship with the market traders in Covered Market, where I couldn't resist walking around with my chain. And also the Quarry Rovers Football Club's 70th anniversary, which is nice as chairman to present one of our colleagues who also served 40 years, and my good gym friends who have supported me throughout the last couple of years. And moving on, my Move with Mayor Mark campaign, encouraging people in Oxford to get active and move more, and more importantly, enjoying our green spaces, parks and nature reserves, as well as our fantastic sport facilities that Oxford has to offer. And I thank Vicky, Galvin and Sharon for their continued support to make this happen. So thank you to my chosen charities, fellow councillors for your continued support, town hall keepers for putting up with me, the drivers who drove me to various events, everyone who supported the fundraising events, everyone who hosted me at their events, And last but not least, my family, my mum and sisters, and my uncle and aunt who are here today, and those who aren't, my amazing wife, Louise, Lady Louise, and my son, Sam Liger here, and I have a daughter who's travelling at the moment who's in Peru, and I know she'd love to be here. Well, I think she preferred to be in Peru, but... and so, best of luck to my successor, Councillor James Fry, and remember, keep smiling, keep caring, and be thoughtful of others. I call upon Councillor Louise Upton to propose Councillor James Fry as the Lord Mayor of Oxford for 2022-2023.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Lord Mayor, councillors and honoured guests. It gives me great pleasure today to propose James Fry to be our new Lord Mayor. I'm absolutely delighted. As Mark mentioned, it's the first one since the pandemic, and after 2 years of doing things on Zoom, it is so nice to be doing it in the flesh, have everyone here in the flesh. I think you're all much better in 3 dimensions. Now, James was first elected 10 years ago. And James is not what you expect from someone who's got more than 1 degree from Oxford University, I think it's 3, from someone who's trained as an agricultural economist and who founded his own company that now employs well over 100 people in the UK and worldwide. James is just as at home advising the Mexican minister on what beans to plant this year as he is on getting a broken bench fixed on Aristotle Lane Road. Now, although he's looking very smart today, actually, I think it would be fair to say that his cycling jacket is quite scruffy, and since he doesn't own a car, that is what he usually arrives in. Now, all councillors here have been out knocking on doors a lot, even more over the last couple of months in the run-up to the election. And I know for all of you there are some conversations that you have again and again on the doorstep, and I think this time for a lot of you it's been along the lines of, I'm so sorry about the way the County Council put in the low traffic neighbourhoods. But in Walton Manor, the conversation I mainly have when I've been out goes like this. Hello, I'm standing for re-election to the City Council. And they'll say, oh hello, do you know James? And I say, yes, I do. He's the other councillor for this ward. And they'll say, oh, he's brilliant, isn't he? He's absolutely marvellous. We love James. And I'll try and steer them back to what the council's doing. We're building lots of council houses, we're decarbonising our leisure centres, and then they'll usually interrupt with, yes, but James is amazing. Where does he get his energy? And, you know, it goes on like this for some time, and finally I'll try and say, it's me standing this time, you know, can I count on your vote? And I said, of course we'll be voting for James, we always do. So, yeah, then I give up, just say, yeah, fine, vote for James. So, now the reason everyone knows him is not because he posts on Twitter every day, he doesn't. And it's not because he puts photos of himself doing stuff onto Facebook every day. He doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that James isn't computer literate because he, for example, he's always sending me emails at 4 o'clock in the morning from Bogota Airport. But I'm saying that people know him and remember him because he's out doing what a good councillor should all the time. He's out talking to people, he gets involved with local projects. At the moment, he's the chair of the St Margaret's Area Society. He organises the North Parade Market. He goes to all of our Residents Association meetings, and we all know what I'm sure those can be. Though, to be fair, for Parktown Residents Association, it usually involves a glass of white wine in the gardens while Tom York from Radiohead strums something on the guitar. James does the litter picks for Oxclean on Port Meadow. He restarted and he coordinates the Canal Festival on Aristotle Lane Road. So I think it's fair to say that James is a fantastic ward councillor. But also to the immense relief of every councillor here, He chairs all of the finance and the audit committees for the City Council, thereby saving the rest of us the enormous headache of trying to get our tiny brains around the intricate workings of the council finances. Thank you, James. And I just wanted to mention the fact how competitive James is. So after last year's election, when he got a staggering 1,056 votes, his reaction was one of mild annoyance because Councillor Susanna Cressel, to whom he is married, had got 1,063. Right. So I know James is going to throw himself into this role, and that may well just be to see if he can beat Susanna's total number of engagements when she was Lord Mayor, which I believe is well over 500. And I should just mention, I did ask Susanna if she would like to propose him, to which her reply was, "Oh no, I just complained about him not doing the washing up." And frankly, I have no idea, James, how you find time to eat, let alone do the washing up. So, James, thank you for taking on this huge role for the city. I know you're going to be brilliant, and I would like to formally propose you.
Okay, I call on Councillor Hoslia Jafari Mabini to formally second the nomination.
She's not here.
Not yet. Okay, then I call on Councillor Edmund Wendy, please.
Thank you, honoured guests, councillors, and High Sheriff. So, Councillor Fry is an experienced councillor, sat in this chamber for over 10 years, and he is a very kind and thoughtful and great listener. He is equally precise and exacting when it comes to his facts and figures as well. James has made a particularly important contribution to scrutiny meetings and has made numerous invaluable contributions, and also taken the time to make newer councillors such as myself feel very welcome. His calm and thoughtful exterior does hide some hidden depths. Back in his youth, when he'd finished one of his degrees here at Oxford, he set off on a trip to Zambia with Councillor Pressel, and I'm told that they had a baby with them that they carried around in a cardboard box, which doesn't sound very safe, but I guess in those times it was quite normal. They drove around in a little Morris Minor 1100. They got as far as a place called Lubumbashi, which I think used to be in the Congo, so quite extraordinary. He's visited over 100 different countries, and he's still never been to Disneyland. Those intrepid children have now grown up and are a huge source of pride to James and Susanna. I know that one is doing GCSEs in Brighton, and the oldest one is on a gap year in Cambodia. James's choice of charities this year really show his values, and I think they're fantastic choices. So we have Asylum Welcome, who are obviously a preeminent charity in Oxford, helping asylum seekers and refugees from across the world, including, of course, those recently from Ukraine. Also Emmaus and Aspire, who are helping homeless people and helping people get back on their feet. So that's really fantastic. I just think that James has got a great generosity of spirit, and I really just welcome him and glad to formally second him as Lord Mayor. Thank you.
I now call put the nomination to council for the votes to be taken. So those in favour of Councillor James Fry being Oxford Lord Mayor. Okay, I declare Councillor James Fry as Lord Mayor of Oxford for 2022-23, and I extend my congratulations to you.
James Fry.
I have to sign the acceptance. So I, Councillor James Fry, having been elected to the office of Lord Mayor of Oxford City Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Oxford City Council. Thank you very much. Please be seated. I hope you're aware that these bells are ringing just for this ceremony, which is extremely nice. So, Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, distinguished guests, and many friends, family, and other fellow councillors. I must thank you. I should mention, I don't know if you're aware, the reason Hosnia wasn't able to give her second speech was that she's actually working in the ICU at the hospital right now. So Edward kindly stepped in on her behalf. So I was going to thank, well, her indirectly, and Louise for your very kind words. That was lovely. I hope that, and I'm sure that what I'm going to say won't duplicate what you said. And I thought I would talk a little bit about myself. But first, I want to acknowledge that the last two Lord Mayors, Craig Simmons and Mark Ligo, their terms were blighted by COVID. And even so, having worked so hard, there'll be very hard acts to follow. I'm obviously going to try and do my best to emulate them, and I'm going to have the benefit of Mark's new role as Deputy Lord Mayor, which will help to support me. I thought I should explain a bit, because I think most of you will not be familiar with this, how I come to be here today. It's sadly very relevant what I'm about to say when our government currently is so hostile to refugees and asylum seekers, which is why Asylum Welcome is one of my nominated charities. My father was born in Poland, and just one cousin from his family, I have a cousin from my family here, just one cousin from his family in Poland survived the Holocaust. This explains, I think, why, looking at the politics of my background, my grandfather, who was a most unlikely person, joined the Communist Party in the 1940s in Croydon, only to resign as Stalin's excesses became clear. My mother's family had emigrated earlier to this country, and I was delighted to find in a book that was written by a resident of my ward, called Lenin in Exile, if you want to find it, a photo of my mother's grandmother, my great-grandmother, sitting with Lenin at a garment workers' meeting in the East End. I remember her a bit, actually, and my memory of her is that she looked like Queen Victoria, which I'm sure was not at all the case. But I remember being particularly happy when I inherited a grand total of £16 in her will, which allowed me to buy an electric train set. Sadly, I didn't keep. Given that background, maybe it's no surprise that I met Susanna, my wife, whose parents came from Vienna, at a meeting of Jacari, which was a very active student anti-racist society in Oxford at the time. And while students, we worked with Lisa Nandi's father, Deepak Nandi of the Runnymede Trust, documenting cases of race discrimination in Southall. And I'm particularly proud that this work actually, there were 3 such projects, Southall, Handsworth and Moss Side, and the evidence we submitted of the failures of the legislation at that time helped considerably to strengthen the Race Relations Act. We then had 5 years of teaching at universities, as you've heard from Edward, in Zambia and Lubumbashi and Katanga in the Congo. And when we came back, we weren't active in local politics. We were members but not active until Susanna became president of the Oxfordshire NUT, no longer called that, the National Union of Teachers. And she was then elected to the City Council over 25 years ago. And it's maybe to catch up with her that I allowed my arm to be twisted to run for this council, while continuing, as I still do actually, my full-time job. Then, out of the blue, and it was genuinely out of the blue, I was very flattered to be nominated as Lord Mayor, which was partly, from my point of view, to restore marital equality, only to learn that she was still going to be ahead of me, as yesterday she became the new chair of the County Council. This is a time when, as we know, the disadvantaged are under particular pressure, and my 3 Lord Mayor's charities were chosen with this in mind. I think all 3 have stalls when you come into the main hall, and they are, if you forget, they're Asylum Welcome, Aspire and Emmaus. On my wider civic role, I've already received many invitations for visits, but I would love to get more from throughout the city. And in this context, I have a special request, which is that where possible, it'd be lovely if the invitations also include the chair of the county council, who I know loves such visits. So I hope my mayoral year will be as successful as Mark's has just been, and as I know Susanna's was. Wish me luck. Thank you. Thank you. I won't sit down because we're now meant to proceed to the election of the Deputy Lord Mayor, which is someone you will know very well with Mark Ligo. So may I please ask Alex Hollingsworth, Councillor Hollingsworth, to propose.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Lord Mayor, Chair of the County Council, I had to add that bit in, councillors and honoured guests. I'm delighted to have the honour of nominating Councillor Mark Ligo as the next Deputy Lord Mayor of Oxford. Mark has just completed his term as Lord Mayor. My seconder and I have agreed to leave that recent part of Mark's service to the city to the vote of thanks. Suffice it to say, though, that he will be a very hard act to follow for all the right reasons. Oxford is a city that successive generations have come to make their home from all over the UK and all over the world. The majority of us councillors, myself included, here today have done just that. Mark Ligo, though, is Oxford born and bred. As are some other councillors who just His life began at the John Radcliffe. His parents and some, he couldn't remember how many, but some of his grandparents before him were born here. There are many of us here who will have had the experience of knocking on a door somewhere in this city to talk to a voter, and have the conversation end with the words, "Oh, by the way, I'm related to Mark Ligo." And there's a much bigger group of people, and that first group's already pretty large, but there's a much bigger group of people who will say, "Oh, by the way, I'm a friend of Mark Ligo." Working to make Oxford a better place runs in the family. Mark's grandfather was a stalwart at the Bullingdon Community Association. His mother worked for Unison. His father was a Cowley shop steward. Mark has continued that tradition as a counsellor, as a sports coach, and much, much more, and with that exemplary organisation, Good Gym. And what Mark is driven by is a passionate desire to make life better for his city, his neighbourhood, and his fellow citizens. And he's delivered. And Churchill Ward and the whole of Oxford is the better for it. Now, sometimes his dedication has led him into slightly sticky situations. Mark has frequently, astonishingly frequently, injured himself in the pursuit of not just sporting excellence, but, among other things, trying to test his daughter's new skateboard, or pulling a fellow counsellor out of a swimming pool after an unfortunate not able to swim jumped in incident. Fortunately, the shoulder is now pinned. I don't think that there have been any long-term effects from the concussion. Though perhaps it could explain Mark's strange obsession with vertebrates. When this council appoints a deputy Lord Mayor, it also gets a deputy Lord Mayor's escort. Louise has been beside Mark's side as he served as Lord Mayor, and she will continue to support him as deputy Lord Mayor. Now, as you've just heard, Mark has made many journeys as a councillor and as a Lord Mayor. But it was the 15-mile journey out of his way to, as he put it, just drop in on that bonus print where Louise worked that was the most important in his life. So Mark Ligo is someone who has served, continues to serve the people of Oxford. He is a comrade and he is a friend. I am proud, therefore, to formally nominate Mark Ligo as the next Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to invite Councillor Steve Goddard to second the nomination.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, the Lord Mayor, councillors, guests. It's a great honour to second the nomination of my colleague, Councillor Mark Ligo, as Deputy Lord Mayor for the new council year. I second everything Alex has just told us about Mark's local roots and, frankly, his family's ubiquity in Oxford. I first became aware of the name Ligo, which, coming from deepest, darkest Somerset, was not a name I'd heard before. About 30 years ago, as a freshly arrived undergrad, when Mark's family were stalwarts of the college I happened to be a member of, and since then it's been coming up in all sorts of different places. Of course, I've come to know Mark much better over the last 18 months of his mayoralty, which, as has already been mentioned, was extended because of the COVID pandemic. And it's an odd position to be in tonight. Strange are the ways of the City Council when it comes to civic offices, to be speaking in favour of the job I've had over these last 18 months, being occupied by the man who's effectively been my boss in that job for that time. There we go. And it's safe to say, Mark has been a great boss. Alex said we weren't going to say anything much about his time as Lord Mayor, and I'm not, except just to say this. I think it was Lyndon Baines Johnson who was told that being Vice President isn't worth a bucket of spit. Actually, there's something rude in that, but it's got bad over the years. Well, being Deputy Lord Mayor of Oxford is a lot more fun than that is if your Lord Mayor is somebody like Mark. Obviously, basically, being Deputy Lord Mayor means filling in for things that the Lord Mayor is unavoidably unavailable for. And with Mark, that did sometimes mean that Deputy Lord Mayor engagements over the last 18 months were fairly few and far between. He has been an exceptionally energetic, engaged Lord Mayor, and he has been a pleasure to work with. And, ladies and gentlemen, when I say energetic, I mean energetic. On those occasions when Mark and I have happened to be on duty together, it has been all I can do to actually keep up with him. His dedication to sport, his work with Bury Rovers, with Oxford United, his work with the rugby tournament has already been mentioned, and also his Move with Mayor Mark initiative. It's got to be said on the rugby tournament side, given frankly Mark's injury record, I'm very much hoping that he's not going to be trying out that particular sport anytime soon. Beware if you do. In short, Mark has been an excellent Lord Mayor. He's put up with my sometimes inexact timekeeping, the occasional speech made partly in French, and I have to say, my Lord Mayor, you are exceptionally lucky to have him as a reliable, friendly, hard-working deputy for your year in office. It's a pleasure to second Mark's nomination.
Thank you very much. May I take a vote among the councillors present, please? Those in favour? So I see it unanimous. So Mark Ligo, you are now elected Deputy Lord Mayor.
I, Councillor Mark Ligo, having been elected to office of Deputy Lord Mayor of Oxford City Council, declare that I take the office upon myself and duly and fully fulfil the duties in accordance with the best of my judgment and ability. I understand to observe the code of conduct which is expected of members of Oxford City Council.
Thank you very much. Well, Mark is a familiar person up here by now. Next we come to the appointment of Sheriff, and the person nominated is Councillor Mike Rowley. Proposer, I believe, is Ed Turner. Would you like to come and propose, please?
Thank you, Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Lord Mayor, and warmest congratulations to you. I know you have a brilliant year. Fellow councillors and guests. And if I may as well, I'd also explicitly like to thank council officers for putting on this tremendous show once again tonight. I know that sounds a little bit Eurovision, but it really is a very special night for us all. It's a huge pleasure to put forward Mike for Sheriff. I first met him when he first came to Oxford in 1997. I think it's fair to say that was not a turn of events I'd seen coming 25 years later. Mike grew up in Stafford. He tells me he regards it as the most boring place in the world. His reasons being that the coffee shops shut at 4 and there is only one curry house. He arrived to study law at Wadham College. I don't know if the story is apocryphal, but I believe he turned up a year late. Unfortunately, they let him carry on anyway. I use the term study quite loosely. Mike was also very active in campaigning as a student. Mike campaigned for peace, he campaigned for the rights of migrants, he was very active in LGBTQI+ campaigning, and of course, like many of us, he was also a mainstay of the hugely successful campaign against tuition fees, which we fought throughout our undergraduate years. At the same time, I mean, Mike's an avid reader, and I don't know if he actually reads. He seems to absorb knowledge almost by osmosis. So whether it's bees or Soviet ballads, more of which in a moment, Mike just seems to take it all on. His involvement with Oxford City Council started after he was elected in a by-election in 2010, after actually a very good Liberal Democrat councillor called Patrick Murray stood down, big boots to fill. And it was a real pleasure for us in the Labour Party. He'd been very involved for some time. He's a legend at running what we call a canvas session, and he cuts a distinctive figure, rain or shine, always wearing shorts, long legs, pounding the ground. He never gets lost. One of our very dear colleagues, sadly no longer with us, Jennifer Pegg, always refused to go in Mike's groups because the pace was sort of so full on. And he put an awful lot into that activity. It was great to see him joining council himself. And I'm actually also very pleased to see that just exceptionally he's not wearing shorts tonight. Mike, outside his council role, worked as a caseworker for Annalisa Dodds, our Member of Parliament, and before that worked for her predecessor, Andrew Smith. And that's also a very good fit with Mike's skills. He's very kind, he knows the law, he's got tremendous attention to detail. And actually when a phone call came in from the government department, not one of the better ones, saying, would they please mind bothering them a little bit less often with the concerns of constituents, I'm sure that had a little bit to do with Mike's tenacity. I asked Mike what made him proud. He mentioned the Barton Pavilion, and specifically the fact it has a pub licence and is not a private bar. He also mentioned the new council homes on Barton Park and said what a pleasure it was to see people moving in there. And he mentioned just how pleased he was to see the community of Barton developing. In his council roles, housing has been a real passion. He's been overseeing and has played an instrumental role in our big strides forward in building council housing and also in tackling homelessness. But Mike also memorably played a role on leisure, playing an important role putting the new pool on Blackbird Leas. Mike loves swimming. In fact, he's often to be seen in the summer months down at Hinksey. And I have to say, like a previous Lord Mayor, John Tanner, he resists no opportunity, loses no opportunity to take his clothes off for a chat, apart from, within reason, in order to do a charity swim, for example, for the Leon Lake. And actually one other moment sticks quite strongly in my mind. We had a council debate a few years ago about having a council mental health champion. And Mike's contribution to that debate was quite remarkable, very personal, and well worth going back and having a listen. So all of this hopefully has persuaded you that Mike is a good person. But why particularly sheriff? It's not really about law enforcement. I mean, Mike knows the law, but as will have been said, it's probably not a natural fit for him to be running around enforcing it. He does, though, bring something different to the role. He's a vegetarian, actually, so the animals have no fear. He also will save money on the uniform, because at the very least you won't need trousers, only shorts, and that will save some money as well. Though bathing, I mean, I know we've got the bathing place now there, Mike, but I would urge a little bit of caution with the swimming trunks. But I think the real sort of USP for Mike here is something which the Swedes apparently called hulning, the Romanians call horia sunaduri, which is to yodel, to call animals or to express sorrow. We hope, Mike, you have no sorrow, but I rather love the idea of your yodeling to corral the animals around Port Meadow, and I think that's something to look forward to. North Oxford beware, I'd like to propose Mike Brown.
Very much, and I'd like to call on our leader of the council, Susan Brown, to second.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, congratulations Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor. It gives me enormous pleasure to second the nomination for Mike Rowley to become Sheriff. Sheriff is actually the one civic role that I can speak about with some degree of knowledge, having held this one myself. Mike, I know, having had the honour and pleasure to serve alongside you on both Cabinet and Council for a number of years now, that you will have been seeking as much information as possible on the role of Sheriff and will bring to the role your usual boundless enthusiasm, energy and amazing brain. Also, knowing you well, I hope that you pass on the opportunity to do the roundup on horseback and think carefully before throwing a baton at the dolly and the traditional Aunt Sally match at the plough. I also advise against inviting former Lord Mayor and Sheriff Ray Huddleston, or myself, to be on your team, as I think the plough only just finished the repairs after his and my efforts. Mike, the role of Sheriff is, I believe, the oldest civic role, and it comes with few duties, but those that there are really important. Preserving and protecting Portmeadow for future generations is a wonderful privilege, and I know that it is one that you will enjoy, and the duties associated with that, from the inspection to the roundup, are ones that I know that you will carry out with your enormous enthusiasm and diligence. So I hope that you thoroughly enjoy the year. I'm delighted to second your nomination. Good luck.
May I ask the councillors present to vote on this? Those in favour? I think that is carried very clearly. So, Mike, I would like you to come up, please, and make the declaration of office.
I, Councillor Mike Crowley, having been appointed to the office of Sheriff of Oxford City Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Oxford City Council. Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Lord Mayor, congratulations. Deputy Lord Mayor, I will say congratulations that you've been there for a year and a half already. Fellow councillors and honoured guests, thank you and welcome once again to Oxford's Town Hall for this annual civic event in which we show our friends at the university that we too occasionally enjoy dressing up as Harry Potter. Special thanks to my good friends Susan and Ed. To Ed especially, both for his distinguished speech and also because in large part it's his doing that I'm here. One day in 1999, you may remember this, Ed, in the King's Arms, he put a Labour Party membership form in front of me at a point in the evening when, to be honest, I didn't have much idea what I was signing. 23 years later, though, here we both are, responsible adults and pillars of local government. Indeed, I take my new civic role so seriously I'm even wearing long trousers. When you think of a sheriff, you might imagine John Wayne in a waistcoat and a wide-brimmed hat, or the cackling villain perennially foiled by Robin Hood. But in this specific context, the sheriff is the most ancient civic office in Britain. The first mention of Oxford as a city comes from the reign of King Edward the Elder, and that king's first code of laws begins thus. King Edward commands all the sheriffs that you make such right judgments as you know to be most just, and in accordance with what is written in the Doom Book. These days, the sheriff's functions are rather less dramatic, but I undertake to represent Oxford faithfully, at home and abroad, to count the cattle on Port Meadow and the Plom, and to throw on sunny sticks at dollies, at least with enthusiasm. Civic officers may seem an old-fashioned institution, but in today's world more than ever, anything that helps to build and strengthen community cannot fail to be of some use. Let's take a moment then to be proud of our city. A city is a melting pot of cultures and a breeding ground of ideas, a meeting place for people and a platform for new movements. Our city is all these things and more, and over the last 2 years, together we have risen to every challenge. Here in Oxford and around the world, we have seen huge efforts made and huge difficulties overcome at 2 levels, the local and the global, more than at levels in between. I'm lucky enough to have 2 shining examples before my eyes. First, the wonderful work that has been done in my ward, Barton and Santos, throughout the pandemic to make sure that everyone in our neighbourhood is well, has the basic things they need, and isn't entirely alone. It's been my privilege to be able to invite some of those who've done that work here today, and I'm only sorry I couldn't invite them all, but if I were to ask everyone in my ward alone who's helped look out for our neighbours during the pandemic, we need a bigger town hall. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Second, as it happens, from my living room I can see the Gem Institute, and from my office window I can see Oxford Biomedica. These, of course, are the organisations that work together to produce a vaccine designed and priced specifically to be deployable all over the world, not just in rich countries. And this tremendous achievement has been made possible not only because those are brilliant individuals, which of course they are, but by the living community that they have joined and helped to build. There's an old slogan, think globally, act locally. But surely it's at least as useful to think locally and act globally. I don't want to sound too portentous at this celebration, this celebratory event, but this event does take place in the world rocked by climate change and war. We have a choice between the solidarity of human communities, conscious of their kinship with one another, or the self-defeating selfishness of powerful interests bent on short-term advantage. Of course, I don't want to exaggerate our importance, but Oxford, along with thousands of other communities, has a great part to play. My part will doubtless be very small, but it's still a privilege. Therefore, I am very honoured to accept appointment to the Shrievalty of the City of Oxford.
We now turn to the vote of thanks for the outgoing office holders, civic office holders. So first I would like to ask Susan Brown yet again to come and propose. Thank you.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, I've already given my congratulations to the Lord Mayor. Deputy Lord Mayor, but may I congratulate you, Sheriff, on your appointments. And I think I was proved right in my comments about the Sheriff and his research. So I'll just leave it to that. But I think we can see from the new office, the civic office holders, that they will certainly be carrying on the fine traditions of the previous civic office holders, and that our civic offices are in very safe hands indeed. However, I'm here today to propose the vote of thanks to the outgoing office holders. And let's face it, they certainly had a challenging time.
fact that was reflected in the longer period that they and their immediate predecessors were elected to serve, 18 months rather than a year, to try and ensure that for at least some of the period that they were in office, they'd have something approaching normality. These most recent civic office holders probably had a slightly closer to normal experience than the previous three, but there were still a number of occasions on which, sadly, big civic events such as the Lord Mayor's Christmas Carol concert had to be cancelled because of the pandemic, as the former Lord Mayor, now Deputy Lord Mayor, referenced in his speech. Having nominated Mark to be Lord Mayor 18 months ago, it gives me great pleasure to propose the vote of thanks. Having checked and found out that he had 200 civic engagements during his period as Lord Mayor, I cannot understand how it is I still managed to see so much of him in the ward that we both represent, the fantastic Churchill ward, since you ask. And I know that Mark has taken a particular pleasure in his time as Mayor in involving the people of Churchill ward in his mayoralty, whether it's been inviting local school children into the Lord Mayor's parlour for tea, or taking the High Sheriff on a run around the ward. Move with Mayor Mark was an impressive campaign, tackling the need for all of us to get more active and making the links with physical and mental health. Mark is absolutely to be applauded for his work on this, and he's even finally shaken me into replacing my bike, which I'm very much enjoying cycling again now, so thank you, Mark. I'd also like to thank the Deputy Lord Mayor, Steve Goddard. Steve has been an admirable Chair of Council on the couple of occasions that he had to stand in for the Lord Mayor, and has completed about 20 duties on behalf of the Lord Mayor, but as I think he indicated, he didn't get much of a chance. So thank you very much for your service, Steve. And finally, I'd like to thank Dick Wolfe for his role as Sheriff. Dick is now retired from the Council, so it's really nice to see him here again today. But I think it was a fitting touch for a Green councillor to spend his last year as protector of the meadow. Dick also carried out nearly 20 duties as Sheriff, so our thanks must go to all three of them for their service to our Council, representing us across the city, as well as for their service to the city. Thank you all very much indeed for the service that you have given to our city and to the Council.
I would now like to invite Councillor Andrew Gann, please, to be the second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Distinguished guests, councillors, friends, welcome. Let me begin with a word of advice, James. Never try and keep up with your wife. Believe me, it can't be done. But some of us having a little bit of a sense of deja vu, because we had the honour of witnessing yesterday James receiving another chain of office in his role as chair's consort at the county council from the new chair of that particular body, Susanna, accompanied by the slightly gruesome spectacle of Conservative councillors referring to Susanna as Madam. They'll learn eventually. Or maybe not, who knows. It occurred to me that because Mark is making the unusual step of moving from being Lord Mayor to Deputy Lord Mayor, no fewer than 4 people have the task of speaking about his contribution from this podium. And I thought if we'd been a bit more organised, we could have divided up the letters of his name between us. The speaker could have gone with L for Lord Mayor, Y for his useful charm, G for his geniality, and O, well, there's no choice. O would be for Oxford United. It's been a tremendous benefit, I think, to have such a staunch supporter of our wonderful football club. And what a great season, despite the slight fade at the end, as our Lord Mayor, a great ambassador for that particular club. And it set me thinking, if we had to cast Mark as an Oxford United player, who would it be? In his role as Lord Mayor, chairing council meetings, would it be Jack Stevens, not letting anything past him? Would it be the gaffer himself, Carl Robinson, barking at all orders at everybody from on high? But in the end, I thought it would have to be a local boy like Mark. So I went for one of my favourite players of recent years, Kidlington-born Callum O'Dowd, who would start positioned on the left wing, but be prepared to move into the centre ground for the good of the team. See what I did there? But Mark's been a wonderful supporter and ambassador for the club. In fact, I think we could go so far as to say that if you cut him open, he would bleed yellow, which just goes to show that, like so many friends in this council, he is, of course, in the wrong political party. And in the spirit of cooperation, I'd like to thank Alex for that token. But I think I would just like to, if I may, just pick two small aspects of Mark's tenure as Lord Mayor for particular noting. His support for football, of course, supports not just to our local professional club, but absolutely to football at the grassroots, which is such a wonderful part of civic life and of the sporting club in this city. And his support for the Quarry Rovers is exemplary and second to none, as we all know. And secondly, the fact that he chose RT, the Cowley-based charity, as one of his charities for the year, where, as colleagues may know, I've been a trustee for a long time, and can confirm what a huge benefit that was to the organisation, both in financial terms through the fundraising efforts, but just in sheer visibility and having that exposure. That was a wonderful benefit. So, thank you, Mark, for that. Mark has steered us out of COVID. He has combined his role with being a member of the Cabinet since last year at Oxfordshire County Council. We supported twinning arrangements with our friends in Europe. So thank you, Mark. Steve, as Deputy Lord Mayor, has had to step in for whole council meetings and occasionally for parts of council meetings when Mark has nipped out to the Lord Mayor's parlour for a swift half with some visiting dignitary or other. And all we can say is that Steve did it with great charm and distinction. And that might be because he's used to being put on the spot. I'm sure some of you will know that among his many other achievements, Steve is a distinguished participator in broadcast quiz shows. He was on BBC Mastermind, I think it was the semi-finals, yes. And Radio 4's Brain of Britain, he also got to the semi-final, and found himself on one occasion up against another distinguished Oxford politician, Matthew Ledbury of the Green Party. I'm not going to say who won that particular contest. Although I did get one question right, which Steve didn't, which is always really satisfying. The answer was, of course, Camwick Green, Steve. Everybody knows that. But thank you, Steve, for your service. In his professional life, he is a leading expert on the works of French novelist Gustave Flaubert. He teaches tirelessly, and I know, because I happen through my own professional life to know a number of the students that Steve teaches, the esteem and affection with which he is held. One of them said to me the other day, oh yes, everybody always wants to be taught by Steve. So thank you, Steve, for combining that effort with being our Deputy Lord Mayor. Last but very much not least, we come to the outgoing Sheriff, former Councillor, Dick Wolfe. Personally, it's been a huge pleasure to work alongside Dick. Highlights in my working relationship with him include the review group that he was a member of into tourism in our city, and I remember his contribution with enormous admiration and gratitude. He and Craig, I think, gave us all a model of community engagement in their delivery of the traffic scheme in their ward. It was very nice to see Craig when he's here with us. And I'm not going to go as far as Louis to actually mention the dreaded three-letter acronym, because I'm sure it would be held against me if I did. But you know, it was a model of sheer hard work in getting the details right. I think something that we could all learn from. Dick is a very scary cyclist. When I first joined the council in 2014, he was actually a resident of my ward. And I remember joining in with my then colleague, the late Jean Fuchs, a long-running debate about the access from the cycle path onto Lonsdale Road, which I'm sure many of you know, and whether it should be possible for cyclists to basically zoom out of there at high speed and run the risk of knocking old ladies and small children flying. Well, let's just say we haven't necessarily solved that one, but it was quite a relief when Dick moved away. It's particularly alarming seeing him go past on his recumbent bike, like a sort of low slung racing car. But you know, Dick has been a wonderful servant of the city, he's been a wonderful representative of his party, and I thank him for his service as sheriff, but also, if I may, as a councillor over many years. And I look forward very much to welcoming Dick back to Oxford politics when the first cable car ascends in the distance over Headington Hill and begins its stately progress down towards the city centre, where Dick will be waiting to crack a bottle of champagne on his bows and christen it the HMS Dickworth. I'm very happy to second the vote of thanks to the Outgoing office holders.
Thank you everybody very much. We are now going to proceed through to the main hall. And you're all invited, of course. I remind you that there are some tables describing the selected 3 charities. I hope all 3 are represented there, the ones that I've selected. And I look forward to seeing you again inside the main hall. So thank you all very much.